Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the show. So, there's a lot of talk about Jerry Brown running for president, and I think he was the governor of California, and there's some other people in California running for governor. But my question is this what you want for the country? I mean, it's kind of getting out of hand. It's probably not the people's fault that are living in these tent cities and stuff, but this is just one street in California. And if you go through California and look around, man, it's devastated with homeless people. I'm not positive, but I think they said there's 54,000 people living on the streets in California in tents. And it's not just in places like this. Let's just listen to this little bit of Fox News here. Let's just listen.
Youth in California. Lawmakers here call it a humanitarian crisis.
Okay, I'm gonna change it to my headset here so I can hear a little bit better. Sorry about that.
One of the most prominent havens is in downtown Los Angeles, a homeless community known as Skid Row, butting up against businesses and housing. People live openly there on the streets, in camps and tent cities. In 2017, on any given night in the U.S., more than 500,000 people were homeless, but most of them were in
more than 500,000 people, a 500,000 people, and 25% of them are in California. 25%. Wow, that is crazy. 4% in Texas. Florida, we have our own problem. We got 6% homeless. But in Florida, we really don't see those type of situations where the tents and stuff are at. We see people panhandling and stuff. But we have shelters and things like that where people go and stay at night and stuff if they choose to do that. A lot of them don't choose to do it. A lot of them just choose to be out on the street. And in New York, 16%. But California, 25%. And they are the ones that, New York and California, between the two of them, 25% and 16% homeless, living on the street in tents. So you got 54,000 in California and probably 30,000 in New York, if that count is right. And they're complaining about wanting to stop the influx of people coming into the country. I feel bad for those people, but the country that they're originated from, the governments should take control of their countries and get rid of the thugs and the drugs and all that stuff. And we buy so much stuff from Mexico that there's no way that and there's so many jobs in Mexico. Why would people want to come to the United States? Because of the rule of law and the drug cartels in Mexico. And I know we've got a few in the United States that are coming up from Mexico, but we're trying to stop it, and Mexico's not trying to stop it. So when are they going to get on board and help with this and get rid of those people and have a thriving country? They have beautiful beaches and stuff and resorts and all that kind of stuff, making millions and billions of dollars, and they're not controlling their infrastructure. They're just not doing anything with it. Just like Venezuela, and I'll get into that later. But did you know Russia is pulling out of Venezuela now? You probably didn't even know Russia was in Venezuela. But what they did, they went in, they loaded up all the gold on the planes and took the gold back to Russia. So the gold that they have to back up their dollar is gone. The President Maduro of Venezuela had Vladimir Putin come in and take all the gold to Russia. So where do you think he's going to go when Venezuela government completely collapses? He's going to Russia, where his money's at. And now he's defaulting on loans from other countries. But that's another story, and I'll get into that later. But let's get back to this homeless situation in California, because The people in California are the ones that want open borders and wants anybody and everybody to come in the United States. And this is what it's done to California. Let's go back.
California, followed by New York, Florida, and Texas. In Los Angeles, the average home price is around $600,000, but experts say you have to earn over $100,000 a year to rent an average two-bedroom apartment. Adding to the problem has been a rise in crime in California neighborhoods. Some blame the release of more criminals onto the streets due to Proposition 47, a measure pushed by Governor Brown, reducing penalties for nonviolent, non-serious crimes, converting some felonies to misdemeanors. Critics say now drug addicts often escape punishment for crimes to support their habits. Any theft under $950, even if it happens during an armed robbery, may not be subject to jail time.
Did you hear that? You can get robbed by somebody with a gun in California if they pass this law, and it's going to be a misdemeanor for the person committing the crime. That's because all the jails are full, all the streets are full, and they don't have nowhere to put these people already. And we're letting 2 to 3 million immigrants, or not just immigrants, well, you can call them immigrants. I don't really want to label anybody coming into the country, but you know, we bring in 1 million illegals a year. Well, 1 million we bring them in. 1 million come across the border that we know about that are not here legally, and then we have unknown numbers coming in from all sides of the United States that we don't even know about. So it's well over 2 million people a year. And that's been going, the million people a year have been going on for 50 years. They started doing that about 50 years ago, bringing in 1 million people a year because the government wants this bubble thing. They probably don't want the bubble because bubbles burst. But they've created a pyramid scheme and a bubble in the United States that the only way to keep the money coming in for all these lobbyists and politicians is to keep growing the government and growing the population, and therefore making the government bigger and having more money coming in because you got more people. But if those people are not, if they're all living in tents on the street and begging for money, which I ain't saying all of them are, but 500,000 of them are right now, or almost 600,000 that we know of that we've counted. Who knows how many more out there that we haven't counted. But it's just out of control.
Steve.
All right, thanks, Anita. Now, we talked about crime earlier. I want to go back into that, but there's so much else to explore here. Congressman, let's just get back to this question of whether California under Jerry Brown is a model for the rest of the country. It seems to me that there's another way of looking at it.
Is California a model for the rest of the country? Are you kidding me? I'm going to let him talk.
Which is, it's an example of exactly what's gone wrong with the economy, in the sense that parts of California are booming. Silicon Valley, as Governor Davis has been saying. For those doing well, it's great, but there's so many people in California who've been left behind by this economy. And the Democrats have been in charge of the state for an awful long time.
Okay, I don't want to hear what those guys have to say because I already listened to it and I don't want to torture you with it, but they basically said California is a picture for the United States. That's what we want everywhere. That's what they said, and I'm not going to play it because it's just out of this world. So let me get back. Let me get back here and let's see. I was going to do another one. This is right downtown. This is right downtown Los Angeles.
So the footage on your screen.
Okay, this is Tucker Carlson, Fox News, and this is downtown Los Angeles. You see all those tents, right? I mean, in Orlando, could you imagine all those? If you're from Orlando or visit Orlando, could you imagine all those tents and things lined up and down Orange Avenue, downtown Orlando? My goodness.
The picture you're looking at right there was shot by one of our producers last week. We were out in California all week, in Los Angeles, supposedly one of the richest cities in the world, and in some ways it is. But the video you're watching shows something else. California's poor, meandering, trash-filled streets right in the middle of the city, right downtown, block after block. Homeless encampments along the sidewalks, blanketing downtown L.A. The footage you're watching starts at 5th Street and San Pedro and goes west. Again, block after block, tent after tent. This is how the poor spent Easter Sunday in California. They weren't clustered along a single road either. It wasn't just like Skid Row. It was like many Skid Rows. We drove down 3 completely different blocks, and the encampments just continued. Looks like Tegucigalpa or Port-au-Prince, but it's not. It's America's second largest city. The encampments begin just 2 blocks away from Little Tokyo, one of LA's major tourist destinations. Nearby apartments rent for $3,500 a month. You might be wondering, with so many people priced out of local housing, the people are literally living in RVs, miles of RVs parked along the streets, and as you're watching here, in tents. Why wouldn't local leaders want to slow or stop the flow of new arrivals to get prices under control, to opening up new housing? They're doing the opposite. LA is a sanctuary city and a sanctuary state. Every politician there with any ambition will denounce our border as an atrocity, and immigration enforcement is an abomination. The poor in California are an afterthought, one of the reasons why they're multiplying. That's why when California Governor Gavin Newsom decided to fight poverty last week, he flew to another country to do it, El Salvador. The same people who want no limits on people moving here can't even house the people who already live here.
So, as you can see, I mean, it's just crazy that they would want this. I mean, I don't understand the thought behind it, because it's just out of this world that you don't. And that's the same thing is happening in Orlando, Florida. Average house here is around $250,000, but the new subdivisions they're putting in, the houses are $500,000 and up. And you got, I mean, either one of you or both of you in the family, combined income has to be over $100,000 to be able to buy one of those houses. But also, I was reading some other stuff on some financial stuff, Washington Journal and Washington Post and the Times, and you know, a lot of these housing developments, that the houses in my area that I believe to be true, they're selling for $500,000 and up, but they've sucked these people in again, and they're giving them interest-only loans and telling them, hey, we'll give you a 5-year or a 7-year interest-only loan, and by then the house will be worth a lot more, and you can sell it and make some money. That's not what happened in 2008. Because I remember in the early 2000s, they did the same thing around here at that time in Orlando, and they gave interest-only loans to these people for these houses. At that time, they were like $150,000 to $300,000, and by 2008, 2007, their house was worth a lot of money. You know, they could probably double their money if they would have sold it at that time. But they didn't. They held on to it. And in 2008, when the bubble burst, then everything was chaos. I don't have to repeat history for you. You know what happened. But a lot of people lost a lot of money. And now here we are, 2019, and by 2020, we're going to have another bubble burst, and it's going to be terrible because these banks. It's called bridge loans. Bridge loans. If you go to the bank and you don't have a 750 credit score or above, and they if you're had a couple of things on your credit, which I think that's a scam in itself, and the bank says, well, we can't do it, but we have this other company, or the realtor says, yeah, we can help you get financing. We got this company that does what they call bridge loans. It lets you get a loan, and then for interest only, and then after a while, after 4 or 5 years, you get your credit, built back up and everything. Then you can convert this into a regular 30-year or 15-year conventional loan, and man, you'll be in the money. But that's not what happens. That's not what's happened in the past. I tell people not to go backwards and look back, but the past history has a way of repeating itself. And so now we're at 2019, and we're right back where we were in 2008. In 2008. Let's just see if I can find another one.
Where does your almond milk come from? Almond Breeze starts here with our almond trees in our Blue Diamond Orchard in California.
Shocking photos show just how bad the conditions are getting in downtown.
I mean, now this is a whole different area, a different story. And now they're talking about typhoid. Yeah, it's gotten so bad there's typhoid on the streets. But let's go back to the video.
Los Angeles, with the city overwhelmed with trash and rats and even a typhoid outbreak.
A typhoid outbreak. Well, our next guest in a new op-ed blasting the state's politicians, saying they can learn a thing or two from President Trump's slogan, America First.
Here to weigh in is attorney and host of the Hidden Truth Show, Jim Breslow. Hey, Jim, good to see you.
Good morning from beautiful California.
Yeah, you live out there. Tell us what you see when you walk down the streets in L.A.
He's not going to say
First of all,
that.
I want to start with the positive, that California is a beautiful place. Mountains, oceans, beaches, desert.
It looks beautiful.
But I think that's also part of the problem, is that everybody loves living here. People are going to continue to come here.
Yeah, they're going to the beach.
And it doesn't matter how bad our government gets.
His statement makes no sense at all when you're looking at these people that are living on the street and are homeless and going to the bathrooms in the street, and there's rats and typhoid spreading. These are not the people that go to California, go to the beach. These are the people that lived in California that lost everything that they had because of the prices of everything has gotten so expensive. It just pushed them right out into the street. A lot of these people are not transits and not what he's portraying them to be. These are people that at one time they were doing just like you and I. We have our houses, we pay our bills, we have our cars, and everybody that's not a millionaire or billionaire, we're this close from being in the street right with these people. But he's going to justify it because California is such a great state. So I'm going to go back to it. Let's go.
People are going to want to live here. It's like a restaurant that's in a beautiful location. They don't need to have great service. They don't need to have great food. People are going to still keep coming. And that's what we have in California. And yes, the latest example of that is this trash that has been piling up in downtown Los Angeles, resulting in typhus and so on. The cause of it appears to be the tremendous increase in homelessness that's been reported widely across California. All of my friends and neighbors are dealing with issues with it. I'm dealing with it in my community, which is an affluent community. They're dealing with it in downtown Los Angeles. And we've got a second problem. We have a big release of prison populations. The Supreme Court has ordered California to release prisoners because we don't have proper housing for them. So California is again and again demonstrating the failure to provide the most basic governmental needs for its people.
Yeah, and I think part of the latest situation out there, Jim, is that they were going to try to crack down on the amount of stuff that these people along Skid Row could have piled up, and they decided at the last minute not to do anything about it. Gavin Newsom, the governor out there, said this: California is what happens when rights are respected, when work is rewarded, when nature is protected, when diversity is celebrated, and free markets are free markets. We are nothing less than the progressive answer to a transgressive president. Is he right about that?
I think that's part of the problem. We have a governor who appears to be more focused on global issues and on preparing for a run against this president rather than solving the problems right here in California. And that's why kind of the headline of my article was, it's time for California to be put first. There was a belief out there that President Obama tend to see himself as president of the world as opposed to the United States. And I think that's what led to Donald Trump. He said it's time to put America first. We need our governor in California to put America first. He's focused on solving global warming.
Okay.
He's focused on solving open borders. He's implementing the Green New Deal in California with this extremely expensive bullet train, the train to nowhere, as I call it, rather than...
Okay, he's just babbling on now. Kind of like I do sometimes. I get started and I don't even know how many people are watching. Let me go back to my page here. Well, that's okay. So let's go back. Let's go back here, and I saved some of these videos and wanted to share them with you. And let's just
In
see.
July, we brought you a story about poverty in Alabama, which was spurred by a report from the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty and Human Rights, Philip Alston.
I don't know why he said Alabama, because it says poverty in Los Angeles, not Alabama. That would be California, sir.
Alston toured America, spotlighting.
And this is from PBS NewsHour. And let's just
third world style poverty.
See if I can
with
get
poverty,
on
crime, and homelessness. It's existed for decades and has dogged successive mayoral administrations that have tried to eradicate it. It's called Skid Row and is home to an estimated 2,000 members of Los Angeles County's homeless community.
LA has one of the highest rents in the nation. And the reason why there's so many tents out here is because people can't afford to live in a house.
Steve Richardson, who goes by the name General Dogon.
I had the same argument with a realtor here locally the other day. There was a restaurant down here that closed down, and I kind of thought about doing a little pizza place there. And I called her and talked to her about it. And it's not much bigger than my office room here, you know. And they want $3,800 a month rent. And I told her, I said, with that and supplies and employees, you're looking at $10,000 a month before you make one dime. $10,000 a month. And of course I didn't do it, but Florida and specifically in the Orlando area, it's getting to be the same way as California. Rents on things are getting so high that they're pushing people out of being able to open up a business, rent a house, buy a house. You just can't, it's just almost impossible. And now, you know, up to the first of this year, you couldn't hardly find a house to buy or rent. Everything was full. Now I'm seeing a lot of houses that are abandoned. And, you know, it's the same way it started in 2008. I'm just telling you, I was here, I saw it. And me and my wife always talked about it. How can these people live in a $500,000 or $1 million house? They got 2 cars, which are brand new and are making payments on. And how are they supporting that lifestyle? And I was in management at a company, and I was making pretty good money. And some of the employees that worked there, and I knew what their income was, there was no way that they could afford the lifestyle that they were living. But they went out and did it. And then, of course, in 2008, it all come crumbling down. Well, let's listen to more of this.
Is an activist at the LA Community Action Network, which advocates for the city's homeless community.
The majority of the people that you see sleeping on the streets are black, and these are folks that have fell through the poverty level. It makes me really mad.
Along the subject of local and national concern, Skid Row recently garnered international attention when it became the focus of a report written by the United Nations Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty, Philip Alston, whose job more often involves assessing conditions in the developing world.
The homelessness on the streets in
Now, let me go back, if I can go back without my stuff freezing up. Listen to this.
Skid Row recently garnered international attention when it became the focus of a report written by the United Nations Rapporteur on...
The United Nations is doing this report with PBS, the United Nations. You don't see this on your mainstream media news at night when you go home and watch. Yeah, we have little local things going on and some bad things happening, which is terrible on itself. But until these people that well, I don't even know who to blame it on. I mean, it's just something that's happening. But bringing more people in, an unlimited amount of people. I mean, even at your house. I mean, how many people will fit in your house? At one time, a couple of years ago, some people were having a hard time. We had 13 living in our house, 13 people. And I'm telling you, it was just people sleeping everywhere. But they didn't have nowhere else to go. So, we're passionate. We help people when we can. And it was somebody with kids and stuff like that. And some of it was family. And some of it was not family. But, you got to take them in and help them if you can. But let's just say 13 was my magic number, because you couldn't. We got along good. Everything worked out fine. But it was tough. So if 13 is the number, what's the number for the United States? I mean, yeah, we could have probably had 30, but it would have been so chaotic and it would have been bad. You wouldn't be able to get in and out the door, and the bathrooms and the kitchen and everything else. So, I mean, Americans are compassionate people, and they want to help everybody they can. But these countries and these leaders in these other countries are going to have to do something about helping themselves. You can't just shove everybody off on everybody else. Now let's just go back to this.
Extreme poverty, Philip Alston, whose job more often involves assessing conditions in the developing world.
The homelessness on the streets in LA is pretty staggering in terms of magnitude, in terms of how long running it is. There is a chronic shortage of affordable housing.
Nationally, homelessness has been mostly on the decline since 2010, though it ticked upward slightly in 2017 to nearly 554,000 people without their own roof over their heads in a so-called point in time.
Can you see that? 554,000 homeless people in the United States. Oh my God.
Time count. The Los Angeles area, meanwhile, has trended in the opposite direction, as the cost of living here soared over the last decade, forcing thousands onto the street in what has amounted to a nearly 50% increase in homelessness since 2012 to almost 50%.
So in Los Angeles it's increased by 50%. And those people from California, Nancy Pelosi and all the other ones, they want the same thing happening in California to happen in the rest of the United States of America. Are you going to let that happen? My goodness.
53,000 people. The sheer size of Skid Row makes it look like
53,000 people. Let's go back. Listen now.
In what has amounted to a nearly 50% increase in homelessness since 2012 to almost 53,000 people.
Who was president in 2012?
The sheer size of Skid Row makes it look like a refugee camp. But according to a 2017 report by several homelessness advocacy groups, the availability of toilets here is worse than in a UN-run Syrian refugee camp.
It smells of urine everywhere. Skid Row had about 10 toilets, I think, for thousands of people. So it's a pretty bad setup.
So this is, call it the Big Green Machine, and it's a bathroom.
According to the LA Community Action Network, nearly 1,800 unsheltered people in Skid Row share access to just 9 toilets like this one, which means many avoid them altogether and use buckets, which are then emptied into the streets. And
54,000 people have 9 toilets. 9. And this is a government run in the United States. This is in California, downtown, baby.
Trash cans.
And that was PTSD, but I didn't know nothing about that.
Willie Van Seals is a Vietnam vet suffering from heroin addiction, one of almost 3,900 homeless veterans in LA County.
I'll show you. The buckets that we use are urinate, bowel movement. There's nowhere around here to use the bathroom. And that's hard on a person. You know what I mean? Especially you gotta walk around and find somewhere to take a crap. Yeah. Come on now.
The authorities know hygiene is an issue here. The county health department reported that its teams observed feces and urine on 8 of 10 sidewalks during a survey back in 2012. Street washes like this one have been instituted to help stop the spread of disease.
If we don't power wash the streets, we end up with what we had years ago when we had a tuberculosis outbreak or hepatitis outbreak or some kind of disease. It has to be done. It has to be done.
Officer Dion Joseph has been patrolling the street.
And now we have the typhoid outbreak, just to throw that in there.
Of Skid Row for close to 2 decades. He says he's seen well-meaning policies to improve health conditions backfire.
Years ago, we had 27 porta potties in Skid Row. My concern was that they would be taken over by the criminal element. And day one, that's exactly what happened. When those bathrooms were here, gangsters were charging the homeless $1 to $5 to use the porta potties for what they were designed for.
While we're with him, Officer Joseph receives a complaint.
I've got these people who've pulled up in front of the doorway. I've asked them repeatedly to move, and trying to have a rational conversation with the irrational people, I just don't want to do it.
How are you? I'm sorry to bother you. There's a gentleman here who has a business, and the law says you can't be within 10 feet of his doorway. Can you guys move about 10 feet this way so we can have his space?
He resolves the situation without incident. But the UN report points to data from the LA Times showing that 14,000 homeless people were arrested in LA in 2016, a 31% increase since 2011. The report encouraged authorities to shift from a criminal justice response to a human rights-centered response to homelessness.
Homelessness is being criminalized in many ways, and it's as though you sort of keep moving the pieces around the chessboard and suddenly it's going to improve, instead of saying, okay, we actually need to work out how to create places where these people can go.
I agree with the UN. We shouldn't be the tip of the spear. Fix the system, especially in places like Skid Row, where many individuals struggle with dual diagnosis, where they're addicts and mentally ill. We don't want to be the tip of the spear, but we have to be until solutions arise.
According to Victor Hinderleiter of the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, mental health and addiction are a huge factor contributing to homelessness.
Approximately 30% of people experiencing homelessness self-report that they have a severe mental health disorder. About 30% of people experiencing homelessness self-report that they have a substance use disorder. Homelessness in and of itself is a traumatic experience.
Christina Miller, the LA Mayor's senior project manager of homeless strategies, agrees that addressing homelessness is a multi-tiered process, but disagrees that the homeless are being criminalized.
And instead of leading with police, leading with enforcement, we are doing everything we can to lead with services, because we know that police officers are not social workers. That is
leading with services. 9 bathrooms, 9 toilets for 54,000 homeless people on the street. That's how they're dealing with it.
not necessarily in their purview, and having an enforcement-heavy response is not ultimately going to get people off the streets.
Activists say they know what will get people off the streets.
The solution is simple. This is what the solution is. This is the only thing that ends homelessness, is this right here, house keys. And until everybody got them, hey, you got to be good neighbors, because there's going to be people sleeping on the streets.
There are a lot of solutions that we are focusing on currently in terms of trying to expand our interim shelter bed capacity, but we also know what the only solution is to homelessness, which is permanent housing.
Miller told NewsHour Weekend the city of LA had embarked on an unprecedented drive to build 10.
Okay, that's all well and good, but they need something different from this. And I'm not an expert on it, and I can't tell you what it is or what it's going to be. But what I can tell you is to build these nice new places and then have somebody have to qualify for it by not doing drugs and being in rehab. And I mean, and they're not even showing the people that have families and kids that are living on the street, and they still have to qualify, and sometimes it takes a year to get into one of these places. That's not a solution. That's a solution for a small percentage of the people, but for the majority of them, that's not going to help them. They're going to have a different point of view and go at this from a different direction, because you need to have a place for people to go, and you're going to have other people that can control the area and keep the drugs and the thugs out of it, and just make sure people get a place to sleep. They get at least 2 meals a day, maybe 3, hopefully, and have a place to clean up and shower, and a clean place to sleep. So that doing this, I guess it's a good thing, but it's not going to help. It's going to help this much. You know, it might help a few thousand out of 54,000.
1,000 units of housing for the chronically homeless. Those who
So 1,000 units out of 54,000, so that's still 53,000. And how do you pick the 1,000 out of the 54,000 that's going to get these units? Well, I know how they do it, but I'll let you listen to it.
who've repeatedly ended up on the streets or been there for at least a year. It's funded through a $1.2 billion city bond over the next 10 years. That's in addition to a $30 million Bridge Home program directed at providing interim housing in the meantime. And the efforts may have started to pay off. This year, the homeless count in LA County went down for the first time since 2014, only modestly, from 55,000 people to just under 53,000.
Okay, I don't want to beat a dead horse or nothing, but I mean, what happened right here? What happened right here? I think we had a little change in Washington, D.C., and we had a little change around the country. And so things started happening and going down. So can we keep this trend going? I hope we can. But to say that this is, that, you know, that you've helped 1,000 people when 53,000 people are still homeless, I mean, I give you kudos for trying, but you got to do more than that. That's crazy.
But it bucks a 6-year-long trend in the opposite direction.
We are cautiously optimistic. We are celebrating the fact that there seems to be a change in the direction of the trajectory.
She's celebrating that there's a change. I guess it's good that there's a little bit of change, but that's not enough. You got to help when people start losing their homes and their cars and their kids and full families are living on the street. You got to help those people right then. You can't. They just said you got to be homeless on the street for a year or before they're going to help you. A year is too late. Once you're on the street for a year, you've learned how to live on the street, and that's probably where you're going to stay.
And it does tell us that we're doing something right.
Well, they were considerate enough to give us a pantry.
Jose Soto, another veteran, is one of the lucky ones who's recently been housed after years in and out of prison in Skid Row.
I'm really happy with the closet space, but what do you fill it with?
Soto, who's in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction, gave us a tour of the residence the city's provided to him free of charge.
I've been on and off the street for, what year went? Wow, 14 years. And in my situation, it was all due to substance abuse. I just like to get drunk a lot every day, and then before you know it, the lifestyle catches up, and I'm one of the people on Skid Row or under a bridge.
Until newer housing comes online, homes like this are in very limited supply. Only veterans who've gone through a lengthy recovery process from substance abuse qualify for this building.
They treat us like trash.
For vet Willie Van Seals, who's still struggling with addiction, that seems like a distant prospect.
I went to rehab.
Okay.
And when I went through, they promised me when I got through that they would actually give me my voucher and I could go and find me a place to stay.
Okay.
And none of that happened.
Okay.
This is where I ended up at.
So did you manage to kick the habit in rehab?
Nah.
America paints.
So see, yeah, these guys are painting a pretty picture, and you got guys like this. It's a veteran, and he can't get help. Veterans don't need to be living like this for no reason whatsoever. Somebody should help and I don't want to single out the veterans. Everybody needs help. But people that went and fought war for this country, this is wrong.
Herself as a good Samaritan country. I'm glad the UN came here because you see third world conditions right here, in the richest country in the world that's worse than other countries.
The United Nations report notwithstanding, there are other indications things may be improving for the homeless in LA. In 2016, Angelenos voted overwhelmingly for a tax increase directed at funding the creation of homes for the chronically homeless. And while tents still line the street...
Well, I can tell you right now, from my 60 plus years being on this planet, raising the taxes don't help one bit. You know what raising taxes does? It makes the lobbyists richer and the politicians richer. It's just like this lottery in Florida, and the money was supposed to go to schools. And they say like 80 or 90% of the money taken in by lotteries is to run the lottery. And they only get a small percentage for the schools. That is absolutely crazy. That's crazy. It's stupid.
Of Skid Row, this year, chronic homelessness has dropped 18% in LA County.
When it rains, you must have something on this floor.
But for Willie Van Seals and others like him, Los Angeles still has a long way to go.
Wow, that is just incredible. Incredible. So anyway, we've come up on the lunch hour here, and I'm going to get off here. I hope you guys enjoyed the videos, but didn't enjoy the videos, because this is absolutely crazy that in the United States, in New York and in California, we have these skid rows. And I know we have homeless people in Florida where I live, but I cannot. I go out and I know the poor areas where I live at, and yeah, we have poor housing sections and stuff, but we don't have nothing like this where people are living and going to the bathroom in the streets. I do see a few people panhandling on the corner from time to time, but it's nothing like this. But if the people that's running California get their nails into the main government in D.C., and we've already got some of them there, and they're trying to make the whole country like California. It's just not good. I don't understand how anybody could vote for the people that live in these states and have these states run like this to run the country. It just don't make any sense. So anyway, this is Harold with WorldTVOnDemand.com, bringing you another great video. I hope you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and comment below. And I'll have another video for you soon, and you guys have a fantastic day. I am out of here.